You see, guys, I do listen to your suggestions. A bunch of you guys told me I should watch and review Invincible, and I'm really happy you did. Not to spoil how this review's gonna go, but yeah, it's gonna be pretty positive. But now that the season's wrapped up, it's time to review it. Spoilers for Invincible. There are a lot of crazy twists and crazy goings-on that happen in the show, so spoilers. And the way this review is gonna be structured, I'm gonna go through my notes for each episode, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm talking about each episode individually. It's kind of like everything I wanted to say about the show came up throughout the episodes. So if I don't say much about one episode, doesn't mean I didn't like it. It's just kind of it's how the review is structured. You'll see how it works. Anyway, without further ado, let's talk about the first season of... So first things first, overall, I thoroughly loved this season of TV. It's a bit like a reverse of what happened with WandaVision for me, where with that one I thought it started amazing and then it got a little less amazing as it went. This one, the first episode, I was like, yeah, this is solid. I'm on board, but I'm not blown away. And then by the end I was like, all right, I'm now blown away. Yes, you got me. Firstly, the animation style of the show. It's a bit of an interesting style because I think it has a baseline of like where it normally is at, which is solid, good animation. And then sometimes, especially in the action scenes, there's this like crazy fluid movement and it's really creative and really excellent. And then occasionally, I don't know if this is part of the style, like if this was intentional, because as we'll talk about, I've got some like kind of anime vibes to it, and the very little anime I've seen, there, changes in animation style. So maybe it's intentional, but occasionally it looked a little bit like a Flash animation, like sometimes when they're flying or when some birds drop dead in the episode 7. Kind of like the Batman the Killing Joke, where occasionally it just looks like kind of off. But those are like very, very, very occasional moments. My point was more, the animation is generally very good. Sometimes it's insane and incredible. And then like very occasionally it's a little weird. But generally I really like the style of the show, and between the animation and just kind of the world, the style, the genre, it actually reminded me of Justice League Unlimited in a weird way. It was like a mix of Justice League Unlimited and One Punch Man, which is like the only anime I've kind of seen some of. And The Boys, I guess. A mix of those, because it had the cool DC fantasy crazy world that like Justice League Unlimited had. Almost a little bit of a similar animation style sometimes. And then had some of the more like the crazy creatures and some, I guess, a little bit more violent of One Punch Man and like other anime stuff. And I loved that style. It really hooked me. It was like a really violent DC AU kind of thing, but not derivative, like it was also very much its own thing. I'm just saying that's a huge positive, because as you know, I love that show, and the fact that it kind of gave me that vibe was pretty cool. Great music. I love the Invincible theme. I love like those epic hero themes, the one from the Spider-Man PS4 game, and this one, I get it, they're all a bit similar, but they're distinct enough, and I don't know, I love it with the horns, or whatever instrument it is. I'm not great with music, but I know it sounds awesome. And it's interesting that it has this like hopeful feel to it, that theme song, with, how dark the show gets at times. Incredible voice cast here. There are a ton of like, I don't know if you'd call them like guest voices. They're just kind of like voice actors throughout, but like a ton of big names here. You have like Mahershala Ali, you have the dude from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He's very famous. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Okay, I can't think of them right now. I'll put them right up here. There are a ton of big names in this, and they're all great in this. I thought Steven Yeun was great in the main role. J.K. Simmons, his voice, because it's so distinct, was a little distracting initially, but especially towards the end, I guess we'll get to. I think he's kind of a perfect fit for, a dad kind of role who also has to do a bit of screaming and insane acting, which he's very good at. Sandra Oh is great. Just the whole voice cast is fantastic. Initially, and I guess we can talk about this, it felt really like cliche to me. I was like, I don't know about this. I feel like I've seen all this before. And then throughout the show, I'm very happy that it proved me wrong and proved that I'm an idiot for thinking that. Between like the creative storylines, which we'll get to, and then also, I don't know, the way the characters develop was actually unique, especially considering that I thought it started in quite a cliche, we've seen this before kind of place. It developed them so well and was so effective in getting you emotionally attached to this character's journey and his relationship with, with lots of people in the show, but especially with his father, which makes that finale so much more like punch in the gut kind of feeling. But we'll talk more about that as we go. The show is funny. It's just fun. Like it's super dark, but it's fun as well. It's enjoyable to watch. It's entertaining. Like it has good dynamics between the characters. It has funny moments, fun characters that are weird and enjoyable, and just for a show that does get super dark, it's extremely fun to watch. Yeah, I guess we can talk about the cliche-ness that I felt at the start, which then kind of was proven wrong. But like everything about it felt, I was like, okay, I feel like I've seen this before and quite recently. There's another Justice League, and it's like, it's the Justice League, but it's not the Justice League. They have like the Warrior Woman, and they have the Fish Man, and they have the Batman guy. And then there's the Superman guy, and he's actually evil. And then also the element of, there's the kid at school who gets bullied, and then he becomes a superhero, and then his dad's a superhero, and he has to live up to that. And it was just all this stuff that I was like, I feel like I've seen all of this before. This seems kind of like all of it just put together. And especially because The Boys was on Amazon, I was like, we just saw, I know they're from comics, maybe the Invincible comic came before. I was just thinking like, just in the moment as I was watching it, I was thinking like, we just saw this like fake Justice League, and there's actually like something darker and deeper beneath it. And I'm really happy that I was proven wrong immediately, like pretty much after the first episode, because it adds so many more layers to it, with also the secret government organization. And of course there are still, I guess you can call them cliche elements to it. There are still elements you've seen in other stories before, definitely, but it never really hindered the story after the first episode. Again, it's based on a comic, so I guess this applies to the comic as well, but like it doesn't feel like there wasn't a story to tell, and they're like, I'll just take this. Like, it is a similar story to other stuff you've seen before, but it does it in its own way, and you can tell that there was a vision behind this story, that it wasn't just nabbed from something else, And especially with the creative world and creatures and, just it's phenomenal. I will say, like, subverting the cliches of the superhero genre is almost becoming a cliche at this point. That was my impression, like, after the first episode a bit, but it definitely did not come into play in the rest of the show. Episode 2, gets a bit more interesting, I would say. I really loved how the mystery was developed throughout this with Omni-Man, and I mean, there are a ton of plot threads throughout the season, but that one specifically I thought was really well handled, because it gives away what could have been the big twist, that it was Omni-Man who kills him. Like, it shows you that, and then you get to see how it develops, maybe a bit like Knives Out-esque. Like, instead of building up to the reveal that it was Omni-Man, you get to see the consequences and how it affects like the characters building up to them discovering that it was. And it was just extremely well handled, and there's still a mystery element to it of like, why did he do it, and like, what is his motive, like, who is he really, I'm getting ahead of myself, but like, it's truly effectively like heartbreaking to see Mark's mom's reaction, and like how Mark deals with it and all this stuff. And I also enjoyed that the secret organization basically knows from like the get-go, and the demon detective, the people aren't like idiots in the show, like, I like that they know it's him, they just need to like be careful with how they handle it so that something doesn't go wrong. The superhero world is developed more, this kind of DC AU-esque world. I like the demon detective, who's kind of like the Question mixed with Hellboy, I guess. Etrigan, maybe. Yeah, there are just so many cool premises for like characters in this superhero show that is about a bigger thing than this, like what a normal superhero show would be. Like, it's not just about fighting the aliens and, defending the Earth. It's kind of about like a level deeper with the Cecil organization and Omni-Man. But the layer that they have of the superhero stuff is also really well done. Like the aliens from a different time stream, so they age faster and they keep coming back. Like, I don't know, that's so creative and fun. It was a brilliant premise for like an episode. The way Mark has to deal with like the psychological effects of being a superhero, and not just living up to his dad, but the struggles of balancing your life, and how it's psychologically like much tougher than he initially expected. And as we see later on, gets even much more tough. But yeah, by like one of the later episodes, he's like, I've been a bad boyfriend, bad friend, and like, it doesn't really just skim over how realistically this would affect a person's life. I like the song choices in the show in general. It reminded me a bit of the Spider-Verse soundtrack, kind of this modern poppy sort of thing, but not like in a lame, like the way some movies, when they use like a pop soundtrack, it just feels like kind of shoehorned in. This fit naturally with like the tone of the show, and also the main character. The show in general is just really well paced and entertaining to watch. They're great, fun action scenes here. Again, really creative with like the fantasy superhero stuff, and just fluid animation. The, what's his name? The asshole guy, cartoonishly horrible superhero guy. Again, you kind of come around to him, or like, you come around to the concept of his character. He was almost like too cartoonishly annoying. It was annoying how annoying they were making him, if that makes sense. But it got better throughout the show. I just wrote here J.K. Simmons as mustache superhero guy. Yeah, that's an astute observation, BHL from the past. It builds up well toward the final battle, how much better Omni-Man is at being a superhero, and like how much more powerful he is than all of them. And it sows the seeds again. It keeps adding depth to the mystery of like, why is he doing this when he destroys that alien planet? Brutal, and adds intrigue. I guess I didn't even talk about the brutality of the first episode, where he turns the Guardians into absolute paste. I mean, it's super gross and brutal. The violence in the show in general, it is definitely like excessive, obviously, but it serves a purpose, especially in the final episode, which we'll get to. I keep saying we'll get to, but that was some of the most like brutal stuff I feel like I've seen in a while. There's an intention behind it, so it doesn't feel too like unnecessary, I guess. Like, it is obviously unnecessary, but like there is a point to it. It is the style of the show, and it does help to establish like tension in this world. These superheroes are so powerful, and then like look at the consequences of how powerful they can be, and it's meant to be shocking to really emphasize this evil act that Omni-Man is doing. So yeah, there is a point to it. It's super gross. It's kind of Mortal Kombat-esque. Here's a bit of an L for me, as the kids say. I thought Clancy Brown, the voice of many things. I know him as Lex Luthor from the Justice League cartoon. I thought he voiced like a lot of characters in this. And I actually wrote down, very, pompous YouTuber-esque, like, it's a little distracting how many characters Clancy Brown voices in this, like, meh. And turns out he only voices 2. So I'm stupid. Tell me though, the clone guys do not sound like Clancy Brown doing a voice. Come on. I can't be the only one who thought that. He does a great job as the demon detective guy. Again, there are just quite a few fun moments in this episode. The hero tryouts. Just an enjoyable show to watch. Just very wildly entertaining. There's a Baby Driver song in here. From the Run the Jewels song that they made specifically for Baby Driver. So, I gotta give that a mention. Invincible also as a character, I know this review is a bit all over the place, alright, I'm doing my best to structure this. Invincible as a character, I think could have been kind of annoying, like a Peter Parker ripoff a bit, and he's genuinely very likable and fun, and yeah, I think a lot of that comes down to the voice acting as well. And the writing, of course. The Eve and Amber stuff. Bit of a love triangle briefly, and then it's mostly just, the Amber stuff. Having not read the comics, I'm gonna assume he gets with Amber at some point in the future. It's kind of the vibe I'm getting from the show. I liked the Amber romance in that it grounds the superhero stuff even more. It helps show also the strains of superhero life on just like, a regular person's life. I did think it got a little bit repetitive, and I know that's sort of the point. It's supposed to be she keeps giving him chance after chance, and he keeps messing up. But at a certain point, it's just kind of like, we don't need another moment where Amber's disappointed in him, and then, he has to win her back. Episode 5 is the extremely brutal beatdown from the giant cat monster. Again, the brutality of it is excessive, but it does serve a purpose in making it clear just how badly this went wrong. He recovers pretty well from that in just a week. I know he's a superhero and his name is literally Invincible. Sometimes I feel like the show does play a little bit with like how much damage someone can take before they're dead, how easily they can recover. Also in the final episode where he literally like almost gets beaten to death, it kind of makes you question a little bit the power levels and the recovery abilities and like how much danger someone's actually in. I'm not saying it's illogical from a story perspective, like I know he's a superhero. It doesn't feel like cheating necessarily, but it can get a little confusing as to like how hurt someone is actually, like permanently wise. Also, that battle cat thing could kill everyone, I think. Which again, power levels, a little bit confusing. And again, I know people have read the comics and they know the answer to this. I haven't read the comic. I'm just going purely off the show. I saw a pretty funny meme of, I'll just play it here.
This is pointless. You can't stop me.
Yeah, you're right. I can't.
But he can.
It can get a little bit confusing, the power levels of like, he can easily defeat certain opponents, and then something like the robot things that the college student created are like a huge problem. And it feels a little bit more narrative-based rather than power-level-based. Occasionally, not always, but occasionally. And then the cat monster, could that thing, like, kill Omni-Man? Just some gangster can hire that? Like, why didn't the government get that, as the meme points out? Like, yeah, I don't know. Occasionally it felt like it played a little fast and loose who can hurt who in the power levels. Then we come to episode 6. More twists on the robot story. Robot's storyline is crazy and weird and great, like very fascinating, and it keeps you very captivated, like what's going on here, like what's gonna happen. The Adam Eve stuff, generally interesting, a little bit too detached from the main story, or like I know they're trying to establish where her character's at. Maybe there was one too many side cutaways to what she's up to. It detracted a little bit from the pacing, like 1 or 2 times, but these are very minor complaints. We'll talk about the pacing at the end a little bit, because I do have a couple things to say there. Episode 7, the best friend comes back in more, and I actually like that character was there at the beginning, then not really there for a bit, and then came in at the end, because it helps show how his life has been, how like he hasn't really had time for friends, and he's not been a very good friend, he hasn't really been there for him. I didn't feel like it felt out of place, that like, oh, he just shows up again, like, it made sense. On that note, though, The show also, I think, doesn't do an amazing job giving the viewer a sense of time. Towards the end, they start saying, like, man, it's been like 6 months since you got these powers. I'm like, has it? I had no idea how long. It could have been like 2 months. It could have been more than 6 months. Like, again, they tell you, so it's not a huge problem, but just in conveying it, it kind of came as a bit of a shock to me. I was like, oh, didn't really get a sense of that. By episode 7, it really does feel like it's building to a proper culmination with, even though it's kind of like going between all these storylines, they are all coming together, they all are interesting. You really want to see how it ends, you really want to see how the mysteries are revealed. It does a great job of building to this climax in episode 8. I also love the final like action stuff of episode 7 with Omni-Man, how they're trying to slow him down with anything possible. They know they can't stop him, they're just trying to throw anything they can at him. Super fun. It's really good at conveying how powerful Omni-Man is, and it's just great action. It's very exciting to watch, and, tense because the character stuff involved with him trying to get to Mark. And they make it as interesting as possible, because also, like, initially you're rooting for the monster to take down Omni-Man, then Mark shows up and he's also fighting the monster, so now you're rooting for Omni-Man to help Mark so Mark doesn't die, and then they throw the Immortal into the mix. It just makes it as exciting and interesting as possible. It's excellent, great stuff. What an episode. And that's not even the finale. Like, the penultimate episode is this crazy, awesome action stuff. It's really well done. And it sets up this epic final showdown between Mark and Omni-Man, which you kind of knew was coming anyway, but it sets it up as well as you'd want. And then we come to episode 8. First of all, just a bunch of stuff on Omni-Man. So it's revealed that his alien species is kind of, conquerors of worlds. And I kind of got the sense of that in the very first episode where he's explaining, he's like, we help other planets who can't help themselves. That was a bit ominous. I was like, that sounds like kind of Thanos-y thing to say. Like, we're just helping people. And then it just like, murder. The aging thing I thought was pretty fascinating. First of all, it makes sense when Omni-Man went to that world with the other time stream aliens that he didn't get like that much older. And it also helps you understand his character more and how like he's living for thousands of years. And so this point in his life is just like a speck in, like, it's been like a day basically. It gives you a much better idea, and it's a satisfying explanation for this mystery that they built up. Like, why would he do this? All of it kind of makes sense at the end, and it's well written. And then the brutality of that final episode, like, I feel confident saying, I've seen some pretty, as far as like entertainment goes, I've seen some pretty brutal stuff. Either like kind of fun, like a Tarantino Kingsman thing, or kind of disturbing. It's still effective, and like it still gets to me, but it's, I don't know if it's like as shocking, because I've seen, so much of it in entertainment now. This was shocking, and I think it's because, unlike a Tarantino or a Matthew Vaughn kind of thing, it's more meant to be disturbing. You're meant to see it through Mark's eyes of like this horrific carnage and like loss of life in the most brutal way possible. It's meant to show how cold Omni-Man is. That's a understatement of the year towards human life, and it does it super effectively. There's a point to the violence, but the train thing, holy shit, that was, yeah, I don't even know what to say about it. Extremely brutal. I mean, besides all that violence, it is just a very good final battle, like action-wise. It's very exciting. I mean, it's great character-wise, very well animated, and extremely disturbing, which is what it's supposed to be. Also, yeah, very smart to animate this show. Again, having not read the comic, but I've inferred from what I've seen that it's pretty accurate to the comic, and you could not do this stuff in live action. One, like just the crazy, space adventures and all these villains and the scale of it, that would be very hard to do live action and do it justice. Also, violence-wise, like I would not want to see this in live action, like straight up. I wouldn't want to see this. It'd definitely be like NC-17, right? And yeah, also just the brutality inflicted on Mark is extremely intense. He gets the absolute shit beat out of him in this series. It reminds me a bit of Daredevil Season 1. I was almost cringing, because you feel it, like it feels like real damage, because you're so invested in the character, and it's, God. And because, the show doesn't pull any punches. Yeah, that final battle is extremely well done, extremely, like, emotionally effective, because of the work the rest of the season has done in getting you invested in these characters. You really feel, like, the emotional turmoil that would make Mark and, like, his mom, especially, like, that would be so traumatic, and you really feel it because you care about these characters. I also like that it doesn't end with Mark finds the heart within himself and he defeats his dad and he beats him up and he discovers he's more powerful than his dad's ever been. Like, I really like that it realistically kind of goes how the season has set it up, that like Omni-Man is way more powerful, way more experienced, just has all the advantages. He would absolutely destroy him, and he does. And I like that they didn't cheat kind of that setup. Like, they followed through with it. and it was great story-wise. And then the final thing, there's a bit of humanity in Omni-Man. I mean, very, very little. He basically murdered his son. He turned his son's face into pancake batter of blood. That's a pretty gross image. First of all, on Omni-Man, I also like that you can understand him. Like, you do not, at least I do not, and I would hope most people do not, you don't agree with it, but you can understand he has this loyalty to his home planet. Their character makes sense. He doesn't just go crazy for no reason. You understand his motivation, even if it is terrible. Maybe he hasn't been alive for thousands of years, by the way. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration. He's been alive for a while. Correction, I maybe thousands is a bit of an exaggeration, but he's been alive longer than he looks, I guess is the point. I wrote this down, I think it sums it up pretty well. It's an emotionally exhausting finale. Like, I finished watching it, I was like, man, like, I'm gonna lie down a little bit and just chill out for a bit, because, like, I feel tired after watching that. Like, that was heavy. And also, overall, just a great season of developing Invincible's character and doing it in a natural way, and it doesn't force him to a place that his character wouldn't be yet. It builds it gradually, so it all feels earned and realistic. And you completely believe where he ends up by the end, character-wise. A lot of setups for the future. There's the Mars thing, there's the Cat Man, all these interesting things for future seasons. The coalition of planets with the Seth Rogen character, we're going to see that explored more, and that'll play a part. And the, what are they called? Hey, for the record, the fact that I'm forgetting all this stuff is not because, like, I wasn't invested in the show, I wasn't watching it properly. I'm extremely tired right now for various reasons. That's why my brain is, like, dead. So yes, I know all these, I know his friend's name, I know the name of the alien race, I can't think of it at the moment. But yeah, the Omni-Man people are gonna come to Earth, and yeah, just tons of great setups for future stuff with, like, little storylines, relatively little, like, side storylines, like the Martian alien thing, and then the overall story. Just so excited for more of this. I mean, it's just because it's a fun show, but also can't wait to see where the story goes. So overall, this show started, I felt like maybe, it's gonna be, like, fine, maybe a little, I've seen this kind of thing before, I know what this, subvert the expectations of a superhero show kind of thing, and it developed very quickly into something that I couldn't wait to watch the next episode of. These are the shows that I love. I don't have to force myself, I'm like, okay, I should probably watch this episode, like, I actually have to force myself to stop. It's like midnight, and I'm like, okay, I should probably try to get some sleep instead of staying up and watching more of the show. Just a blast, which is, like, super fun as much as it is well written with good character development and, like, super dark moments, It's not tonally inconsistent. One tone doesn't compromise the other. It's a great mix, and just a phenomenal season in general. Really loved it. I love the style. I love the writing, the characters, the action, the world. I absolutely cannot wait for season 2. I've heard that it's already been greenlit for season 3. They've been saying, like, can go on for, like, 10 seasons or something. I heard someone say, which, hey, I'm here for. I say that now, and then season 8, I'm like, they should wrap it up now. But, as of this moment, I'm absolutely here for that. Please don't spoil it in the comments if you read the comics. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Invincible. I'll give Invincible Season 1 a 9.2 out of 10. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Invincible Season 1. Thank you to everyone who recommended I watch this, by the way, because that did inspire me to. I was like, all right, if everyone is saying it's so good, I should probably check it out. And I loved it, so thank you guys. What did you think of the season? Let me know all of your thoughts down below in the comments. While you're at it, be sure to like this video, check out my Instagram and Twitter at BHL_Hudson, check out this podcast that I do with a friend of mine where we talk about movies, TV shows, a bunch of nonsense. It's called The Poorly Planned Podcast, and subscribe for more videos like the one you just watched. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.